Hey golfers, I'm Drew Mahowald of Second Swing Golf here in the tour van at Second Swing at Minnetonka, joined by master fitter Tyler Fitzel here with me today for a head-to-head shaft comparison. We don't do a lot of these, Tyler, but we had a couple new models to test out. I know the Tour AD VF is sort of a 2024 kind of mid to end of the year release, and now we've got one for 2025 here. So Graphite Design Tour AD GC. GC stands for Game Changer.
Yeah.
So we've got some very initial kind of testing and a quick look at this so far. But Tyler, what have you seen from this? And then we also have the Tour AD VF there too in your hand that we're going to test against here in this video.
Yeah, one of the things that Graphite Design does with their models is release kind of in the fall. So we're going to see the new Game Changer getting into people's hands now. Mm-hmm. That's something they've done for quite a while.
Yeah.
Rather than getting that all of a sudden in the spring or later into the summer, where products can really release at any time. The Graphite Design brand has been around for quite some time. It's actually been about 36, 37 years. An extremely high level shaft, very winning in the idea of all across the world. It's got over 50 worldwide wins.
Yeah.
So, when we start talking about this brand and this model and the differences in the models, we've got an elite shaft on that, and we're pretty recognizable for that. So looking forward to talking a little bit more about it. I've actually got that in my own club. It has become my gamer.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
so let's kind of just dive in right now. So right now in my hand with this, I have got a GT2 driver fit in with the Tour AD GC shaft.
Yeah.
There's a couple of new pieces of technology Graphite Design has told us about this, AD Studio tech in there, and then of course some of the other items that have been in previous shafts that are still successful for them. So kind of what's all involved here, and why do you like it to play in your driver?
One of the things that I find with the shaft is that it presents two major factors for a golfer. The first is feedback, because shafts in the way that they're created, the materials they've got, they're making the shaft to create a feedback. It feels this way, it feels that way. It's stronger here in the shaft, it's weaker here, it's softer here. Those are the things that create that feedback. The other piece of the puzzle is, do you have something that's creating the optimal results? So for instance, for me, I need something that gets a little bit more lift.
Sure.
And this is a mid-kick design. I also like something that is a little bit stiffer for that profile. But one of the things that there are two major changes that they made with this shaft over some of the others. First, they've created what's called the AD shield.
Yep.
And that's where they're using extra plies of their material along with the same Torca M40X that they've already got in many, if not all, of the prior generations to that. So that's a material that gets laid in as they're making that shaft. And that gets the stiffness of certain parts of the shaft. And in this particular, they're doing that in the handle section.
Yep.
And so it's providing the stability on the transition part of when you pull on a shaft to be a much more stable and transfer energy in a different way.
Yeah.
Versus if it were softer. As an example, 2 models ago was the CQ, or what they called the Conquest. That was a much softer handle section, midsection, tip section. It produces a higher ball flight. It also feels a little softer for that as well.
A lot more flexible. Like for someone with fast swing speed and fast transition, you probably lose a little bit of where that club head is, or at least the feeling. Whereas with this model, you're going to have a lot more feeling of control with it.
When you start talking about adjustability in drivers too, well, no, we're talking about the one that we have that we're just hitting today is the Titleist. And when you start talking about the different models where you have loft adjustability, you can actually use that loft adjustability and the shaft to help create some different numbers.
Right.
So, like I said, I look at it as more of optimizing the numbers on the one side, but also the shaft giving you a certain feedback.
Yeah.
Now, one of the ways that Graphite Design is produced a similar feedback in all of their shafts is they have the way they lay the materials down, a specific proprietary process in which the way they incorporate their materials. There's like almost all of the Graphite Design Tour AD shafts have a very similar feel to them in terms of maybe an overall softness, if you will.
Yeah.
Whereas you can make something very, very, very stiff, but not end up having to worry about it in terms of its its harshness,
Yeah.
right? So if I get something that's really stiff, like this is a pretty stout shaft,
Right.
doesn't necessarily feel harsh.
Sure.
And that's one of the,
I've taken a little, you take a few swings off camera and you kind of get a feel for that, what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Because there are shafts out there, say, for example, Ventus Velocore Black,
Yep.
that you just feel it's just like a, telephone pole. Don't have so much of that with this one.
Right. And the other side of it too becomes the other models. So for instance, if you wanted something that reacts a little differently, you could get into a different model. So we see as an example here, this is the VF,
Yep.
which is VictiForce from last year. This shaft is a very, very stiff profile, very low launching type, very low spin type. And we'll get a chance to actually compare these.
Yeah.
Because that's one of the things as we look at is say, well, what shaft would work well? You have up-tempo swing, you've got power, you have connection. It's like one of these two in the same settings is going to fly a little differently.
Right.
So
that's what we're gonna do today. I mentioned the setup here. GT2 10 degrees is just in the A1 standard setting for the hosel. Just straight up wanted to test the two shafts and see, we can talk about how it feels and how the performance with TrackMan differs. We'll get some good swings with each and look at the numbers, but I'm curious to see what actually happens here.
Yeah.
That face was closed. That could go left. No, that's fine.
It's okay.
Don't mind that. A little low for me, but that's what makes me kind of scared then to hit that one, because that one's maybe a little lower launching even. That was obviously a miss.
And remember, we put you, we put you in a 10 degree this time as we're testing this. I know you're a fan of the 9 degree. One of the things that we talk about quite a bit in our fitting sessions is that sometimes we have a window that we see as we're talking about where that ball's flying. The shaft isn't creating that window, but the shaft can help to create that window.
Yeah.
So in regards to that, if this is a little lower, because it's coming off a little bit with less spin,
Yeah.
That might be where we need to add spin, and loft does that really well. Then on top of it, we can start to mess around with loft, maybe increase or decrease that. So it's like maybe that window can just get higher by increasing the loft of the club, not you trying to swing that way.
Right. Yeah, ultimately we don't want the player manipulating the swing. It's find the clubs that fit them already. That felt like a better swing.
Yep.
Took a little bit off of that one, and look at that.
And something to note about this shaft in general, they made it with a slightly larger diameter size from kind of the midsection down to the tip. And by slightly, it's probably not something that we're going to see.
Yeah, it's probably not visually able to.
But being slightly larger overall allowed to create more stability from the midsection down to the tip section without really having to make the shaft that much heavier. So what this actually does is produce a little bit of a lighter weight shaft. So now you have some more weight options. We always talk about flex as more of a weight option than it is just what the letter someone puts on it.
Right.
So as long as we've got a different weight selection. So if this is a few grams lighter than the VF or some other predecessors to this as well, you can start to get some different flex combinations going.
Yeah. All right, hit that a little low in the face. Yep. That was kind of a closed face heel. There we go. It's a little better.
Let's go after a couple.
All right.
Just see what happens.
Step on them.
Yeah, I like to believe that the stability in these shafts will help increase some control.
I'm finding the swing a little bit here. Just had the face a little open.
Yeah, the numbers weren't necessarily the worst numbers.
No,
that was okay.
Like just the face being open kind of
Yeah.
increased the spin and therefore.
Yep.
But so I can square that up just a little better here. Hopefully I didn't overcorrect it too much. No.
Oh, really nice. And we're seeing too, high launch, low spin. We're seeing the numbers.
Yep.
As we talk about them in terms of carry and total distance to that. Remember, it's ball speed, launch, spin, and direction. That's slightly left of the line down there. That's.
Yep. And I like the feedback I'm getting too.
Yeah.
That I can, like I have a feeling too when I'm swinging what, I have a pretty good idea of what's happening, and then of course there's that feedback off the face, but I have a good awareness of where the club face and the club head is during all my swing.
Yeah.
Which I like.
That's one of the things about the stability, and that's what I meant by the feedback is, so like where you are in your swing is very important, and where you feel the club is in your swing. It's all right if you want to feel something that's lighter. It's okay to feel something heavier, but does it create optimal numbers for you as well?
Yep.
You know, there's a few outliers on the sides,
Right.
but in general, this is also rather straight.
Yeah, I mean, I like where most of those dots were right down the middle. You know, I like that a lot. Yeah. So now, if we transition to the VF,
Yeah.
do you have, I guess, a hypothesis for what would change?
Yeah, one thing I try never to do is I never try to guess what's going to happen, because in the game, it's like the shaft. A good example of that is we talk about the profile of a shaft. What's low launch? What's mid launch? What's high launch? It's the swing that you put on it. It's the loft of the club. It's the swing of the golfer that's going to create that, not the shaft that'll create that. But knowing what I know about your game and the consistencies and the speeds at which you swing, this should launch a little bit lower.
Okay.
I don't know that it will spin less, because you're already a very
I'm already pretty low spin, yeah.
So like, you know, when you say, well, it's not spinning any less. Well, when you're already at the bottom of the spin, like where it's going to be,
more down you can go.
Yeah, you're not. Yeah.
Otherwise, it becomes harmful, and then it's actually going to hurt you quite a bit.
Yeah. So let's try that.
Okay, let's do it. Or maybe we just start with the ramped up one on accident. I like that though.
One of the things that I find interesting about shafts is we talk about, you know, are we going to see this shaft on tour? This is a profile that we probably will see on tour. That is a profile we've already seen. The VF, the Tour AD VF, has been on tour. We know most noticeably guys like Tiger Woods and of course Justin Thomas, two guys that put it in play right away last year.
Yep.
So that is something that we've seen. This is also a very stout shaft, a very stiff handle, still very pretty stiff in the midsection and the tip section. Not quite to the level of the stiffness even in that. But this will find some tour play because of its launching conditions. And its
I think
stability.
there's enough players out there that want, you know, there's this chase for high launch and low spin. And, you know, but there's enough players out there that actually want more spin to have a little bit more control over their tee shots.
Yes.
I just think to like Tony Finau. I know he's a guy who they've been notorious for not swing as hard as he can. He's probably leaving 20 plus miles an hour on the table swing speed or ball speed, but he does that because he wants to hit that controlled cut with a little bit more launch and spin to it. So
Right.
A lot of players like that where maybe a profile like that might be more suitable. Ooh, I might have trapped that one. Yeah.
Yeah, a couple more.
Toe strike. That one may have been, you got the italicized spin number there.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm less aware of where the club head is here with this one.
We say maybe a bit more. When you say that you're maybe a little bit more less aware of where the club is, I attribute that to this maybe being too stiff, so that you don't quite feel the bending.
Yeah, because I don't feel like I am feeling bending. Like
right.
You know. Yeah, I think that's exactly what it is. There was. I kind of smoothed things out a little bit, and it helped there, I think. That was a mishit.
Well, we talk about a mishit too. This is also useful information. You know, when companies test the shafts, they don't necessarily test them with robots. And one of the things they may do with robot testing in this is actually just durability. It may be like flexing it so many times just to kind of see where issues may arise in breakage. Yeah. But when we start talking about what these companies are doing in terms of testing, it's live subject testing. And that's so important because you're not a shaft that does the same thing every time. You want that, but the swing's not the same every time. So what we want to gather is we want to gather information, and you know, information like that right there. What they'll have, companies will have, is a much more finer scientific process to this. They'll have markers on the shafts, markers on the club, markers on your body. They'll be looking at all of the ways that club, the shaft, the body is moving, to kind of start to put together a bigger piece to the physics, if you will,
right,
along with the physiology or the movement of anatomy. Yeah.
I got to get one more good swing here before we look at some numbers.
You know, in the fitting world, I know that wasn't the best swing for you, but in the fitting world, we talk about, that's one of the things we talk about right there, is that's not your best, but it's still a really nice shot.
I'm actually very, very impressed with where that ended up. So,
yeah.
I mean, that was a big high toe, you know, it felt like the club even twisted almost at impact.
You know, and I have this shaft. I've played this shaft as well. It's too low for what I need out of the shaft. I need a little bit more launch to it. But one thing I found about this, very, very straight.
Yeah.
Like I can swing, go after it, swing, and it's not going to deviate. Of course, I can make large adjustments that are not good.
Well, maybe I should do that now, because I did that with the other shaft. Let's maybe get after a few of these here. It took off really low. Wow.
Can it hit a couple more?
That took off really low. There's another one.
That came off a little bit low, but for that matter as well.
It felt good though.
Pretty straight.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean 149, it felt pretty solid. Let's see if I can do that again here. That doesn't turn over too much, that's going to be good too. Okay.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
So looking at it from this perspective, one of the things that we talk about quite a bit is the idea of that launch and that spin. Well, you know, as a collective, you can see is we've got shots that are off to the right and the left. We've got shots that are a little bit longer. There's a little bit shorter on this side, but I'm not worried about a shot like that. What I'm looking at is this overall average of launch at 11.5 versus 13.5.
Yep.
Right. I predicted that we probably wouldn't see a lot of difference in spin, and we didn't.
Right. Yeah.
And that's, but the launch angle to that alone, even though there's maybe a little bit more ball speed on that side, the launch angle is where it's really impacted in terms of the carry distance. So you'll notice that as an average, the carry distance isn't quite as far. That's where the change comes in. That's why the launch angle is so important, and the spin rate is equally important in terms of our optimal numbers. So when we start breaking it down on these shafts, that's like, for you, the GC would be a better shaft.
Yeah, it feels better too. I just like to feel it better because, like I mentioned, like I could feel a little bit of that flex,
right? Which
I did not feel in the VF here.
And if we wanted to look at this as kind of by the optimal numbers, right? You're hitting at 300 yards on average. That's great.
Yeah.
But you're missing really in the carry distance aspect. We go back over to the GC, and you'll notice that
closer.
Yeah, the carry distance is in a much better place, even though, and even for that matter, a few more miles an hour of ball speed, and you actually have a better optimal number over there. You have a better optimal on either side of that. So
right.
I like where that average comes in, and I think that GC would change your game, pun intended, right?
Nice.
But that's one of the reasons why a fitting at second swing is so important, because we want to be able to dial this in. And I say, all right, we go back to that game changer because you like the way it felt. It produced some really nice numbers for us. We're not done tweaking on that driver yet. That could be a different weight in the head. It could be a different angle that we put it at. Those are the other things that we want to look at as well, is say, you know, what if we added a little bit of weight?
Yeah.
Does that actually help increase a little bit more up and a little bit more carry distance? Also, does it stabilize and create more moment of inertia, or MOI?
Right. Well, I guess to wrap up here, because we want to get back, like, just kind of try to differentiate these two, you know, maybe the type of golfer or golfers that would fit into the game changer, the Tour AD GC, and then the same thing for the Tour AD VF here.
Yeah, I would start with, we'll start with the game changer. This is new to the product lineup for Graphite Design, the Tour AD GC. This is a 2025 release. It is already on shelves and it's hit stores, and it can be ordered through us at Second Swing because we're an authorized retailer to that. Also, we do fittings with this. We have this in our tour van locations. This is a product that's going to fit really well for someone who's desiring maybe a little bit more launch.
Yeah.
And it's not that you're going to see a little bit more spin with it, but it could also then have a little bit more spin because of that launch. That's going to increase some carry distances.
That could be a result of the higher launch, not necessarily.
Correct.
It's not like going to generate a ton of spin. It's just going to be a result of it. Yeah.
Yeah. So that would someone who's maybe looking for something that is still, as I would put it, very stable as you swing, but providing a little bit more feedback in terms of where the club is in your swing.
Yep.
Also to that, with a little bit of a stiffer design feature, it can help create a little bit more control. And we saw from that, outside of, again, in either one of these products, we saw this shaft worked really, really well for you. Going back on our time, I know that you need more height.
Yeah.
It's one of the things I've been pushing you on, even in your own game.
Yes.
So what I would say, this would better fit you for sure, because you tend to be a little bit of a lower launching driver swing.
But so then the player that already launches it,
so if you're
high,
exactly.
Maybe you would prefer
if you're launching it a little too high and things aren't really they're what you feel is maybe ballooning, what I think would work really well is the VF. And the VF is a very stable. It comes off and a much maybe flatter trajectory to that, but still offers you up the same stability. It's very stiff in the midsection, and in the tip section, it's not as stiff as the new GC, but it's very, very close in that profile.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we got it. We got a really good comparison here of these two shafts. Golfers can go get a fitting, a second swing, and get themselves dialed in for the right shaft for their game. And of course, these Graphite Design Tour AD models are available in the fitting matrix. So, Tyler, thank you for joining today and giving us the insight.
Thanks.